All right, we are live on UNLV Biomechanics and we are recording. I'm John Mercer, faculty at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and I teach a course or courses on biomechanics and physiology of endurance performance. And I often have a lot of students that are interested in physical therapy, and I am really interested to reconnect with Beren Shah. Hey, Beren, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Oh, doing good. All right, so good to reconnect with you, as I said, because we met at Pumpkin Man a couple years ago. You had a booth up for your PT work, and we had a great conversation back then, and then COVID hit, and now we're just reconnecting now.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about your company first off. Let's hear about that.
Sure. Yeah. So our company is Limitless Therapy Services, and we have a kind of unique model where we're based out of a gym, but we're also mobile. So we can go to people's homes, parks, office spaces, pretty much anywhere you can imagine. We've even gone down to the Strip and had treatment sessions down at a hotel on the Strip. So we got a little bit of everything going. We have physical therapists, athletic trainers, and massage therapists that are now on board with us. So we kind of cover the full spectrum of recovery and rehab all the way to injury prevention and sports performance.
Oh, I love it. I love the remote aspect. And I remember talking with you about that back when we first met. So what's it like with a remote? I mean, now with COVID-19, I imagine that's even more important. I think you're really ahead of the curve in terms of being remote. Like,
Yeah,
what's that type of operation like? How's that? You have a van that's fully equipped, or how do you go?
that's our dream. That's our vision, where we can roll up with a fully equipped RV or truck that has everything built to go. But for now, we all work out of the back of our cars. So we have massage tables that we use as treatment tables, and then we can carry all of our equipment with us: TheraBands, hand weights, ankle weights if we need it. So it's pretty flexible with what we need. Soft tissue work. We have massage creams that we take with us.
Mhm.
Massage cream gets interesting during the summer. We found out.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Oh, great. All right,
Yeah,
so I want to go backwards in time now, and
sure.
I want to hear your story of how you got down the physical therapy path. So what got
Yeah.
you? Where'd you do your undergrad work, and where'd you end up get? How'd you get to starting Limitless physical therapy services?
Sure. Yeah. So I went to undergrad at UNLV or UCLA, I should say, and then took a couple years off trying to figure out everything. Did the whole fooling around in undergrad. Enjoyed myself. First time away from the family. Kind of had a good time. But I'm thankful that I did because I took a couple years to kind of figure out professionally where I wanted to be. Um, Planned on being a physician, so I took the MCATs, started shadowing physicians, and decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. Lots of prescriptions, pill pushing. You see the clients for 2 or 3 minutes at a time as the national average, and off you go. So kind of spent a year shadowing different healthcare professions. I knew I wanted to stay healthcare, but I didn't know what right off the bat. So
Mhm.
dentists and PAs, nurses, the full gamut pretty much. And it was actually my dad that suggested physical therapy. He said, "You love sports, you love anatomy, and this is a healthcare profession that uses both, so you should check it out." I was pretty resistant at first, again, because it was coming from my dad. But after that, I shadowed a couple of PTs in Southern California and absolutely fell in love.
Mm.
Said, "I don't care how long it takes me. This is where I want to be." So took a couple of years, like I said, to get through everything, kind of figure everything out, catch up on some of my grades and some of the schooling that I needed to catch up on, and applied to UNLV and got in. So I was stoked, and that's how I ended up at UNLV. Graduated there 2014. So,
Wow.
yep.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, that's neat that you're an alumni of the Doctorate of Physical Therapy program here at UNLV. So that's wonderful. So your dad got you involved, huh? And you were
He did. He
resistant.
did. It was actually he reads tons of business articles and news articles, and it was a report from a magazine from the U.S. News and World Report that talked about the growth of the PT profession over the next 10 years. And he literally ripped it out of the magazine and brought it home and said, you need to look into this.
Oh, that's great. That's
So,
wonderful.
and actually,
Well,
I'm fairly certain I kept that magazine article somewhere in my drawer at home.
oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
That's motivation. That's great. Great to have that connection. So, PT world is constantly changing. New information comes up, new instruments, new ways of looking at things. How do you find yourself staying current with information related to physical therapy?
So a lot of it's through, actually, I should say, kind of two main forms with research and the association. Staying in touch with the APTA and the local chapter with the Nevada Physical Therapy Association helps us from the research perspective. We can kind of see what everyone's working on, what new ideas are out there, what kind of lines of thinking researchers are progressing to. So that way we can also stay on that cutting edge and really tune into, hey, that was an old way of thinking. Why are we still using it? Let's kind of adapt. And then the second way is social media. So many of these physical therapy influencers and researchers now produce a lot of content for Instagram, for Facebook. I think some are starting to use TikTok as well. So using some of these alternative forms as well to kind of track what people are doing, exercises, equipment that they might have. I have bookmarks the length of my arm on my web browser for different companies that I've run across, different things that people have recommended. And a lot of it's just continued reading after that is this legitimate? Is it not? Is this something that we can use in our practice? So yeah, those are kind of the two main lines that we stay on the up and up with some of the new and current trends.
Well, I love it because you mentioned your undergrad days and you enjoyed that. A lot of times as an undergrad, we're often trying to, how do we get out of class? How do we do less work? But here you are, you're seeking out information, you're seeking out knowledge and probably going to classes and sessions and seminars. And that's so neat because now you're in a totally different position. So looking back at your undergrad days, what would you tell your younger self regarding physical therapy or regarding education in general?
Oh, I would probably tell myself to apply myself a little bit harder. It wouldn't have taken a whole lot more from myself to stay focused and stay in tune. I definitely got distracted fairly easily and fairly quickly when I was in undergrad. But I think part of it was also that I didn't necessarily look deep into what I was doing. It was one of those, I want to be in the healthcare field. Parents pushed becoming a physician a lot. And in the Indian culture in general, it's, physicians, lawyers, engineers are kind of what you're expected to do. So in undergrad, the kind of falling off the train was because I didn't necessarily buy into it myself. And I didn't necessarily think that was what I wanted to do. So if I could go back and say, hey, start looking into things earlier. Don't assume that this is the track for you just because everyone talks about it's the track that should be.
No, I love it. Yeah, and it's a lot of just asking questions and exploring and being open to maybe new challenges or new areas. So
Exactly.
I think that's great advice. All right, so now knowing where you are now with your company, are there courses that you wish you could go back and take, or what courses did you find were super important besides biomechanics?
Right. and honestly, with my undergrad education, because I was pre-med, I was kind of on a straight biology route.
Yeah.
And UCLA didn't have any kind of anatomy or physiology coursework or degree work, really. So there was no kinesiology degree, there was no athletic training degree at UCLA. Because it's a big research university, we didn't have some of that stuff. And unfortunately, my junior year, they created a human movement degree. And one of my cousins actually was in the program, and she pursued that degree. And it had everything that I would have wanted with biomechanics and introduction to research, anatomy, physiology, kind of diving in deep. So some of the things that I had to do after undergrad were take anatomy and physiology because I didn't have them in undergrad because it was a very much pre-med focused coursework. So it's all your chems and OChems and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and anatomy and physiology, my goodness, that's such a foundation. And I know a
Precisely.
lot of students struggle with getting through that class, but it's such an important class. And
Huge.
we're actually trying to create some upper division anatomy and physiology and even graduate class because it is so important. All right,
Yeah.
but how about on the business side of things? Now that you run your own business,
Mhm.
how about is there? How did you even learn how to start your own business? Because in your degree programs, you're not likely getting exposed to that.
Right. Yeah. No, we had we had a single business class, and it was geared towards the traditional insurance-based model
Okay.
and kind of the rules and regulations around the typical model. So we did a lot of reading, a lot of research, and again, with the internet the way it is now, there's a lot of blogs, a lot of Facebook groups that you could follow, and people putting out tons of content, and places that people are asking the same questions that we're asking. So it was a lot of late night reading, a lot of weekend reading, a lot of surfing through tons and tons of news articles to figure out, hey, is this going to work for us, is this not? um, so lots of research really
Mhm.
to kind of figure it out, and then it was a lot of baby steps, a lot of mistakes, a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah, I
uh,
bet.
for sure, with licensing and insurance and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So um, I think one of the biggest things that we learned is we have to identify if we have a need, go to the expert and find and ask them the question. So if it's
Mhm.
go to an insurance expert and say, hey, give us a quote. What do we need? What do we not need? And hopefully you'll find someone that's willing to chat about that stuff with. And that was helpful for sure.
Mhm. Oh, that's good. That's good advice too. Is, know your limits and when you need to get good advice and
Yep.
tap into people who really know things out there. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
Well, that's great. It's super exciting to see the success you've had at building this company, and I can tell that's a lot of work. So, all right, but I always advocate for having a good balanced life. So, what do you like
absolutely.
to do outside of work?
Sure. I spend a lot of time with my family, with the kids. We play around in the backyard, wrestle around, go on hikes. The kids have both started loving hiking. My daughter's 2.5, so she's out there marching around, digging in the dirt as we get out there. And up until now, my son was in the carrier with me, just turned 1. And the last hike we went on, he refused to get in the carrier.
No.
He wanted to walk and hike with us. So we're like, okay, it's a fairly flat trail, fairly open. We let
Yeah.
him
Uh,
take 20, 30 steps, fall, cry a
yeah.
little bit, back up, run off again. So when I say hike, I say hike loosely. We're not
Yeah.
going on
Yeah.
20-mile hikes or that. We're going for a half a mile maybe.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Oh, I love it. And you probably pack a lot of stuff like we used to. Is for
Oh
that
my
half-mile
gosh.
hike, you got everything under the sun just in case.
Yes, yes. For
Oh,
for the bags that we take on for that half-mile hike, I probably could have spent a week
yeah.
abroad when I was single.
That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness, that's great. Well, that's wonderful and great to hear that connection with the family. And all right, so now let's go back to endurance because that's where you and I met. We met at a triathlon,
Right.
and again, I loved hearing about your business model, and it was really neat. Um, so, what drew you to getting involved with triathlon, and maybe what kind of clients do you see?
Sure. So, our one of our biggest focuses is injury prevention. PT, we tend to deal with a lot of the flip side. You've had the injury, you've had the surgery, you've had the problem, we have to fix it. But with all of our education, with all of our continued coursework, we can apply all that same knowledge to preventing that injury. So, part of our model with the mobile side was getting out to these events and trying to reach the clients before they ended up in therapy, before they ended up with a catastrophic injury or an unnecessary surgery. So a lot of times, you have knee pain, it gets nagging, doesn't go away, and then they end up straight into a surgery. Whereas in reality, it could have been a mechanics issue that we could have caught early, fixed, and they never would have needed the surgery. So with the populations we work with, we're kind of attacking pretty much any active individuals, whether they're youth, adults, weekend warriors, um, to get after that injury prevention piece. So that's really where when we went at Pumpkin Man, we were kind of just getting things off the ground in terms of pushing towards those events, but really getting out there, talking to people, giving them the information that they need, and then letting them decide what to do with it after that.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so, have you done a triathlon?
I have not.
Oh, we got to get you in.
Everyone's been pushing me. I did, what did I do? It was Tough Mudder.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
Yep. Way back when it was supposed to be a 10 miler. And when we came back out, I was like, that didn't feel like 10 miles. Like, yeah, well, we had some challenges. So it ended up being 13 and a half miles.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
And my buddy looks over at me. He's like, see, you could do a half marathon. You should do it.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'll get you into a race hopefully in 2021.
Yeah.
But you and I we reconnected recently because what you're doing is you're looking at really involving the science with PT, and you do a lot of measurements, and you're looking at and have a lot of neat equipment. Talk about some of the equipment that you have, or where you're going with measurements of movements.
Sure. Yeah. So with technology the way it is and the way it's growing, we're using a lot of objective measures to evaluate and assess our clients on a regular basis. So one of the biggest ones is, especially for the running population, is the 2D motion capture system that we have. And we can do gait analysis with it and regular biomechanics analysis in terms of running, jumping, cutting, those kind of dynamic movements to really see how your body's performing in these situations. So it's not bringing a triathlete and having him do a couple of squats and trying to decide why he has knee pain from there. It's, hey, let's get you on a treadmill and let's let you run, or let's take you out to the track because this is a mobile system, so we can take it out there and see how they're running. We've had a couple of athletes that say, hey, it's at mile 10 that I start having the pain. So, okay, cool. Go run 9 miles. Make sure you finish at the gym, and that last mile we'll run on the treadmill so we can really see and identify.
I love it.
Is at that 10 miles, because the first 9 miles we're not going to see anything.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to use that system. It measures real-time joint angles, real-time for the knee, the hip, the ankle, trunk angle, pelvis tilt. So it's pretty awesome to see it real time. And then we can also use that system as a biofeedback system, and we can run it while they're on the treadmill to show them, hey, if you change your cadence a little bit faster, a little bit slower, these are the changes we see in your entire mechanics of running. If you have a little bit more arm swing or a little bit less arm swing, this is the kind of trunk rotation you can get, and we can adapt to each runner's style. So we know that one size doesn't fit all on most runners, so we can't kind of cookie cutter and say, hey, a larger stride and more arm swing is going to work for you. It may not. It might actually make things worse.
Yeah.
So that's the neat part of using this kind of objective data. It's very individualized. We look at it not only at the beginning, but we can look at it through the course of working with athletes, so we can see how they're adapting, how they're changing, and then really also puts the onus on us with our treatments. We can say, hey, this is actually working, or, oh man, we worked for 6 months and we haven't changed a dang thing. So
that's great.
Keeps us on our toes as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know you're also looking at other equipment like electromyography and force platform technology.
Yep.
So yeah, and you're targeting some great stuff.
Yeah, and it's super neat to be able to give it to the general public as well. Typically we see this type of equipment in research facilities or educational institutions. We don't see it at normal clinics because it's pretty expensive stuff. And what we want to do is bring that stuff out to everyone and have it accessible, because I think all of the athletes, youth all the way on up to the pros, can benefit from having access to this type of knowledge and data. And what we've found is that it actually gets a lot more buy-in from our clients as well, because they can see what exactly is happening with their body, and they're going, oh my God. And we just compare it to data for, one of the systems we have is for baseball. So it actually compares the data to normative data they've collected on MLB players. So then automatically those young athletes are going, oh, I need to fix this. I need to really work on this to be like a pro, or I want to be a pro, so this is the course I need to go. So it definitely helps with some buy-in as well.
That's great. All right. So now I don't want to steal your secret sauce, but
No
how,
worries.
what are some of the more common mistakes you see endurance athletes making, and what steps do you take to help them prevent injury even in the first place?
Sure. I think the number one mistake is ignoring their pain.
Mm,
I think I've found a lot of, and not just athletes in general, but runners specifically, tend to ignore their pain a lot. And I think it's twofold. One, because most typical courses of injury, you go to the physician, they tell you not to run for 2 weeks, give you anti-inflammatories, and most runners know this, that they don't like to stop running.
mm,
They want to hear you say stop running.
mm,
So I think step one is, making sure that you can find a place that you're going to go that's going to support you to continue to run and continue to participate in your activity, but also modify it. So I think that's the number one mistake. People ignore small things for a long period of time, and that becomes a huge deal when you're talking about triathlons, Ironmans. You're not running a mile. This is thousands and thousands of steps at a time. So that small problem that started in mile one, by mile 26, by the swim, by the bike, all of a sudden are causing much bigger problems with your mechanics. And the cool thing about the brain is it'll achieve the goal that you put it to, which is finishing the triathlon, finishing the Ironman. But the problem is, at what sacrifice? Now your back hurts, now your hip hurts, now your ankle hurts. So that's where we kind of try to educate the population is, hey, if you're feeling something, if you're not feeling quite right, something's off, get it checked out by someone that knows what they're talking about, and that's going to get you back to what you want to do.
mm. Oh, that's great. I love it. And yeah, the education piece. I mean, if you can train someone to
Huge,
help,
huge.
find, what the key is prior to an injury, boy, that's the holy grail, isn't that's
Absolutely.
great.
Yep.
So, when you're working with an athlete, what type of metrics do you pay attention to with them when they are training or having some problems? Do you go through mileage, or do you go through time, or how do you go through assessing an athlete and trying to? Because a lot of what I look at PT about it, you're sort of like a investigator. You're trying to
Absolutely.
figure out what's the source of the problem. You can figure out what the symptom is easy,
Right.
but figuring out what the source of the problem is not easy. How do you
Yeah.
go about that?
And you put it exactly right. It's being an investigator and really coaxing out what's going on with clients. A lot of times they don't even themselves have an idea of what started the issue, and so it's a lot of guided questions, a lot of kind of checking back in with them on, okay, when did this actually start? Did anything change? Did you have a change in lifestyle when these problems started? Things like that. So it's really kind of honing in on that subjective with the client and really learning about what started it, what's going on, what changed. And sometimes it's not even a physical change. It could be an emotional stressor. And we learned that with pain sciences a lot of times. You can have those physical symptoms from an emotional stressor and vice versa. So really kind of tuning in and learning like, hey, you rolled your ankle 2 years ago, you should still be having ankle pain.
Mm-hmm.
That rolled ankle turned into you had to give up your career in sports, you never played again, and gained some weight, and now you have all these other problems associated with the weight gain. So it's not really that ankle sprain 2 years ago, it's the inactivity, the weight gain over the course of the last 2 years, along with that emotional stress of not having been playing the sport that you wanted to or the activity that you wanted to. So it's a lot of kind of investigative work, like you said, and listening. A lot of it's listening. I feel like sometimes we're therapists for these patients from a mental standpoint too, hearing their full story. And with physicians, a lot of time it's 2 or 3 minutes in and out the door, so that no one's really heard their stories until they get to our clinic. And all of a sudden, half an hour later, we've heard their entire life story.
Mm. Oh, that's great. Well, I love the personal touch. I mean, it is so important because you're just spending time with people and just listening to. I mean, I bet you pick up a lot of cues and clues in terms of what may be going on through those types of conversations.
Yep.
All right. So, what do you see as the future for limitless PT, limitless therapy?
I always joke, taking over the world.
There you go.
Our vision is to build out a sports medicine clinic that has, you know, the full spectrum of bells and whistles and gadgets, so that we can have that top-notch clinic to bring everyone into, all of our youths, to kind of elevate youth sports in town, partner with different sports clubs, track clubs, running clubs, biking clubs, pretty much any club that we can kind of come into contact with to help prevent these injuries, and to educate as many people as we can, to kind of not only make them better athletes, but also make them better with their health. Especially over the last year, we've seen so much inactivity, with the last year and a half with COVID, inactivity that turns into weekend warrior type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So having that knowledge and having that ability to spread that knowledge is where we want to take it. A big part of that is going to be getting better at our marketing.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I'm glad you brought up COVID, because I meant to ask you about that, because
mm-hmm.
on one hand, it seems like a lot more people are getting out and doing things, but on the other hand, they may not have a history of being active. So how has it impacted your business? Have you been able to maintain a strong clientele through this period, or are you seeing any changes?
Yeah. So when everything first was shut down, we pretty much went to 0 patients overnight.
Hmm.
A lot of our clients, actually all of our clients, are cash pay, but we're kind of split between the geriatric population and youth athletes. So with everyone being out of work, all of our youth athletes kind of went kaput, because their parents are not working, they can't afford that kind of ancillary service. And then with our geriatric patients, they were all scared. They were all afraid to go out, or to let any of us into their homes until they knew more about what was going on. So for the first couple of months, we struggled for a little bit there. But since then, we've kind of come back, especially with kind of changing some of our marketing and advertising techniques to focus in on the more mobile side of visits, rather than trying to get clients into the clinic. We're saying, hey, because of COVID, we come to you, we follow all of our standard precautions. And that way it's all one-on-one. We do it outdoors, so people, again, feel a little bit more comfortable with that type of activity. And you hit it on the head in terms of the type of clients we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of people that have become sedentary during the week with, 8-10 hours in front of a computer. They're not used to that type of stuff, whether it's for their own work or whether it's for homeschooling their kids. So a lot more computer work, and then they turn into the classic weekend warrior of
Mm-hmm.
and let's hit the trails, let's hit the beach, let's hit, wherever we want to go. And all of a sudden you have these injuries that they never had before, because they're sitting in a chair for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Everything's kind of tightening and stiffening up on them. And then they go up, and without any kind of proper training, warm up, stretching, they participate in different sports, different activities, even just hiking can cause some of these issues. So we're kind of seeing that that play across pretty much with most of our clients.
Mm. Oh, that's interesting. Well, it's good that you're out there helping people, though. So, because it is inevitable. A lot of people, unfortunately, it's inevitable they get hurt. But
Yeah,
it's good that they're able to come to you and get some help. So, Beren, this has been great to talk with you. I'm
absolutely.
really glad. When we met, a couple of years ago at Pumpkin Man, and to hear about your business model of being remote, I think that's such a neat way to go, especially here in this type of city. I mean, the city is really divided into quadrants, and it's hard to get
Right.
across town. So if you've got some mobility, type of thing built into your business, that's pretty cool. So thank you for taking time to share your story of getting into PT, and your experience, and a little bit about your business as well. This has been great.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to chat.
All right. Well, we'll talk again soon. Thanks
All
much.
right. Sounds good.